dogs, what are the best budget decks in Yu-Gi-Oh right now? Today, big dogs, I have comprised a tier list of the most popular and top budget decks. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you the information on everything you need to know about as a broke Yu-Gi-Oh player. Hey man, look, I can't even blame you. I don't be wanting to spend a whole bunch of money on Yu-Gi-Oh cards either. We both broke. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all big dogs? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Budget tier list. Before we jump into this tier list, I just want to get a few things out of the way, explaining how I rate these Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies and what do I genuinely think of them. First, I want to say that every single one of these decks can be a really good deck under the right player's hands. This tier list is just to give you guys a gauge on how powerful the strategies are for a couple of reasons. One, is it budget friendly? Every single one of these Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks can be built for about $100 maximum. There are certain Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies that can be built for cheaper, which I do take into consideration. Two is that if you invest more money into the strategy, will it become a better deck? With very expensive cards like Forbidden Crown and Pot of Sloth being in circulation, and incredibly expensive engines like the Albaz engine, if you decide to invest into those expensive cards or engines for these Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks, will it actually pay off as opposed to playing a different deck? And then the third is viability. How easy is it for a player to be successful with these Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies? As someone that has had a successful entire series on playing Yu-Gi-Oh! On a budget, those three are some of the most important things you need to look out for when playing a deck. And of course, I was even sure to list the decks that you guys wanted me to talk about in our last tier list, so let me know down below in the comment section, what do you want me to talk about next? Let's start off with Dinomorphia, a deck that is uberly cheap. You can get this deck for about $20, which is crazy. The only unfortunate thing is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has moved far past Dinomorphia. One of the most important things about budget Yu-Gi-Oh! That you have to pay attention to is what cards are other people playing. And board breakers are so much in style. Not only does Dinomorphia Rexstrom have to complete with Crown, completely turning the deck off, which locks a lot of your power in the deck, you also have to deal with Fallen and the Virtuous completely outing the card. Granted, you do get Dinomorphia monsters in return, but there's not a single other Dinomorphia card in the deck that's as powerful as Rexstrom or as game-ending as Rexstrom in the strategy. Unfortunately, because of how far Yu-Gi-Oh! Has moved, I would say Dinomorphia right now is selling food stamps to buy food tier. Not an impossible deck to compete with, but since Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies are a little bit less monster on-field reliant and are using a lot more spells and traps, it's going to be a lot harder for this deck to be able to compete. Moving forward, we have Sacred Beast. Whoa! It's been a long time. Sacred Beast has been a trash deck since forever. The original Raviel, Haman, and Yuria were fun-looking Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. The Timu Egyptian God cards, as you guys have stated it, always had this cool-looking aspect and even cooler effects from times. But they were never really that good. But then incoming a structure deck from a few years ago that gave us a whole new range of support, which was good for Yubel. This new version of Sacred Beast, though, you don't play any of the old cards, and that's a good thing. I think that the Sacred Beast are budget bowler. In fact, I even talked about them in my top rogue Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks for the July 2026 format. Go ahead and check out that video for more information. Moving forward, we got heroes. You guys want me to talk about heroes, so here we are. I spent $30 on Mass Hero Fountains. I spent $30 on Mass Hero Fountains. Unfortunately, Mass Hero Fountain didn't do what I thought it would do for heroes, make it a legit contender. But that doesn't mean that this deck is bad. I think we can always see this as a potential investment Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy. We already have confirmed support for heroes in the future. Albeit Destiny Heroes, which will probably prompt me to include Destiny Heroes as a separate entity, we know that heroes will consistently get support throughout the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh!'s lifespan. It's a really cheap deck, and it isn't that bad right now. I think it's a really good investment. On the other hand, Hecahands has been... Damn. I can't even say Hecka bad anymore. We've kind of ruined that at this point in time. Hecahands has been the punchline for Justice Hunter's decks. I would put it above selling food stamps to buy food, but I would genuinely say it's hard to justify. It's a real shame too, because while Cool Tunes are dominating the game and Enneacraft are actually a really solid Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, Hecahands has failed to live up to expectations. Mitsurugi, let's just get this out of the way. Mitsurugi, best budget deck, and then so is Sky Striker. Even though we're going into the Chaos Origins format and these decks were not supported directly, you still have to take in consideration that both of these decks together combined are $30. Sky Striker is never really out of the contention, and Mitsurugi is a great engine at the very least in so many decks. In fact, I actually forgot Clown Crew, and I guess I can talk about it now. I think that Clown Crew is another potential investment strategy. We know that support is on the way, and the deck is still uberly cheap. In fact, I've been thinking about updating my Clown Crew deck profile, the $10 one that we did for Blazing Dominion. More on that a little bit later. Fire King is in a very unfortunate spot. I think that this deck isn't hard to justify. Like I mentioned before, this deck needs another fire monster to be able to compete. I would actually even say the same thing for Blue Eyes. Now, I do want to make a really big announcement. These two decks still can be successful. I think they're actually very strong Yu-Gi-Oh decks, but as far as a person getting into the game and investing into them, it's going to be really hard to justify. Again, it's not to say that these decks can't be successful, it's just simply really hard. Tenpai Dragons, my brother. Yeah, nah. It's like, bro, literally all of the points that I have said, take it from a 2 and bring it to a 10. The cool thing about Tenpai Dragon is that it is an incredibly cheap Yu-Gi-Oh deck. But with half of the cards being hit, as well as Radiant Typhoon Vision being limited, I'm not sure if I would actually play this deck right now. I would say the same thing for RB, though I don't think it's as bad as Tenpai Dragon. I genuinely like RB, but getting your field spell cooked? Boy, that sucks. I think Darklords are actually a pretty good price deck. It's one of the very few budget decks that can take advantage of Herald of Orange Light. That card's crazy. Anything that can dress that Albaz continuous loop or the Albion getting more Fallens is insane right now. And then when you can get cards like Crown, it's searchable inside of the deck. I think it's pretty okay. Yummy, in my opinion, is a potential investment, and it's simply because Yummy is a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that can work well with other strategies. Anytime you can summon multiple level 1 monsters from your deck to your side of the field, it's a good deck. Hell, you can play Yummy Dark Magician. You can play Yummy Sacred Beast. That is actually a thing. Yummy Mitsurugi is still playable. Yummy Sky Striker is a deck. DDD is one of the funnest Yu-Gi-Oh decks to play. Unfortunately, it's also one of the most complicated. This actually has nothing to do with the price versus how good the deck is. It has to do with how hard this deck is to play when you can literally play another one of these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that isn't as hard and gives you more results. And while I have you guys' attention, speaking of budget, I just wanted to let you know Raven Wing is back online. So go ahead and go to ravenwingtcg.com and pick up your sleeves today. I have been too excited for that news, but moving forward, let's just get to Memento. In my opinion, Memento is a good investment. It's actually at the line of where Dinomorphia used to be. A really cheap deck that if you put money into it, cards like Crown will actually reward you. The reason being is that you could crown to freeze your opponent's strongest monster, and since you're Memento, you really don't care about their monsters. You can attack them directly. This deck works really well in a board-breaking format, which is the one we're in, and can still put up floodgates like the other deck, so it's in a great spot. I could almost say the exact same thing about Mermail. This deck is also really good at making boards. The problem with both of these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies is that they haven't received enough direct support to be able to keep up with the current metagame on a consistent pace. Exosister went from the top of the mountain, in my opinion, too hard to justify, and you're probably wondering why. The answer is pretty simple. Neither Ritual Light and Darkness or Blitzkrieg care about your graveyard manipulation. If Ritual Light and Darkness summons the monsters that it needs to, you can't beat the deck as an Exosister player, or it's hard for you to get over the monsters. I know you guys can definitely figure something to beat out the deck in the right circumstance. And Blitzkrieg getting shifted isn't the end of the world. These Yu-Gi-Oh decks with the right pilot could be eaten real good. They're slept on. I would say the exact same thing for Predaplants. This is a board breaker Yu-Gi-Oh deck that doesn't break boards as well. Allow me to dig a little bit deeper. Super Polymerization has been one of the best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh for some time, but Ritual Light and Darkness or Blitzkrieg doesn't really care about your Super Polymerization. These Yu-Gi-Oh strategies have a different type of resource loop and the ability to stay in the game despite losing the cards on their side of the field. That combined with the reliance more on spells and traps, it's going to be tougher for this deck to be able to compete. I don't think it's bad. Again, I think it's a solid deck. It's just not the great time for it. You guys wanted me to talk about GMX. It does get some new Dino support, but not in this set. Until then, I'm selling them food stamps to buy food. GMX currently just isn't a good Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and the new support only helped it by so much. Invoked as a budget deck. Fortunately enough, Alistair the Reminiscent is only $14. This is one of the better budget decks in the game, and I like the overlap between budget and rogue right now. It's kind of a lot of it going on. We can say the same thing for Angelechy. Another really good price deck because we know it's getting more support. We're still missing the queen in the bishop, and the deck is solid overall. I've seen people play Pure, Centurion, Branded. This deck has a lot of potential going for it and is a pretty strong deck. I also think Phantom Knight is a good price Yu-Gi-Oh deck. In my opinion, the biggest problem with this deck was figuring out its inboard. This deck can actually summon Exosister Carmel and Evil Swarm Ophion. Those are cards that are to be feared and respected. Now, people told me to mention Crystrons in the next one, and here we are. Crystrons are actually a good Earth Machine style Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I don't think that the FTK will be a suitable way to play Earth Machine going forward, simply because players are starting to blend in their hand traps alongside of board breakers, and even if players were all on board breakers, the consistent FTKs are not a real thing. I would put Crystron in potential investment. The deck is really cheap. The Earth Machine cards, in my opinion, are 100% worth it, simply because everything is so accessible. I don't know if we'll get Crystron support in the future, but we'll definitely get more Earth Machine support. We get some every few sets. Mellfy is also a really, really good Yu-Gi-Oh deck. The cool thing about Mellfy is that this is one of those $5 get the entire core type strategies. My boy Ricky on the team has been playing Mellfy, and it actually looks like a really fun strategy that is good at what it does. Does it have an incredibly high ceiling? No, I wouldn't think that it'd be a deck that can compete at the highest level of events, but I think it would be a solid Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that players can use and have success with. Enneacraft is just flat out a good price Yu-Gi-Oh deck. There is a clear ceiling with this strategy. The problem with Enneacraft is that if you don't draw the correct cards, then, well, you're going game next. I want you guys to understand that the limitations on this deck is just as bad as hard to justify, but the results that this deck has, as well as his unorthodox gameplay, puts it at a good price Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Moving on to Sharks. Y'all really want me to talk about Sharks? Yeah, bro, this and Ashened, these ain't it, and I'll talk about both of them. Sharks has way too many problems to talk about. So the biggest problem with Sharks is the starter extension problem. Sharks have a ton of starters between Buzzsaw Shark and Surfacing Big Jaws. That can be a starter. But where this deck really lacks is extenders. The way that Sharks are built, you have to sacrifice a lot of extra deck space and play bricks just to be able to make good combos. But those good combos are decently fragile and can be broken pretty easily with the correct board breakers. As for Ashen, this should... I'm sorry, Ashen player that's been telling me to talk about Ashen. It's just not a good Yu-Gi-Oh deck. We've already talked about Crown Crew, so we'll kind of move over. Tellarknight, I still think, are a really good Yu-Gi-Oh deck. The FTK isn't going to be as consistent as people would want it to be, or Constellar players, but overall, it's a solid, really cheap Yu-Gi-Oh deck that can win games. I'd also put Magnet Warrior in close to the same spot. There's a new spell card, Superconductive Plasma Blast, out of the set that seems really interesting for the Magnet Warrior deck. I'm curious to testing it out. We also know when the new Adamantipator cards come around, Magnet Warriors will get a second look. Overall, a really good budget deck with a ton of future investment potential. Lastly is Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon has the same problems that a lot of these other decks in the bottom of the tier list has. The disruptive cards to your monsters is game winning. Now, somebody did mention they were playing Cyber Dragon as an engine inside of the Earth Machine deck. That would easily be in the Earth Machine category, which is potential investment in my opinion. But Cyber Dragons itself, way too many bricks in the board, not too hard to beat. But that is all that I have for the budget tier list, where I think the best budget decks in Yu-Gi-Oh are right now. Of course, I want you guys to let me know down below in the comment section, what are your thoughts on this budget tier list? Is there something I ranked too high or too low, and what other strategies that I missed? Also, be sure to hype this video up and check out these other ones so I can catch you on the next one.